It was a quiet suburban evening when the police received a frantic call. A woman screaming that her husband had been murdered inside their home. When officers arrived, they expected the usual. Perhaps a robbery gone wrong, or a burglary that had turned violent. But what they walked into was far from ordinary. When officers arrived, they expected the usual. Perhaps a robbery gone wrong, or a burglary that had turned violent. But what they walked into was far from ordinary. The living room told a chilling story. The furniture was overturned, the air smelled faintly of iron, and there was blood smeared across the beige carpet. In the middle of the chaos lay a man in his late 30s. His body motionless. His face frozen in a look of shock. He had been attacked brutally. Stab wounds cut across his chest and arms as if he had fought desperately for his life. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was personal, filled with rage. The detectives knew it the moment they saw the scene. Neighbors soon gathered outside, whispering in disbelief. To them, this family was normal, even perfect. The husband was charming, always waving hello, the kind of man who mowed his lawn every Saturday morning. His wife, pale and trembling as paramedics tried to calm her, kept repeating the same line. "I don't understand who would do this. He was such a good man." But as investigators looked deeper, something didn't add up. There were no signs of forced entry, no valuables stolen, nothing missing. Whoever killed him wasn't a stranger. They were someone close. And as the night grew darker, one question began to echo through every detective's mind. Who wanted this man dead, and why? The answer, they would soon learn, was buried beneath layers of lies, betrayal, and a secret love affair that had been waiting to explode. The investigation started the very same night. Detectives carefully walked through the house, documenting every detail. The husband's phone was found smashed near the kitchen counter, almost as if someone had destroyed it intentionally. That small detail immediately raised suspicion. Why would a burglar bother to destroy a phone? The wife, still wrapped in a blanket and trembling, gave her first statement. She claimed she had been upstairs, preparing for bed, when she heard a loud struggle. By the time she rushed down, her husband was lying on the floor, blood everywhere. Her words were broken, her eyes filled with tears, but something about her story felt rehearsed. Too clean, too perfectly timed. Detectives knew from experience that the truth often hides in the smallest cracks. They pressed her with questions. Did she see anyone? Had her husband received threats? Was there anyone he had issues with? She shook her head to every question. But neighbors began telling a different story. One neighbor mentioned hearing loud arguments from the couple's house late at night in the past few weeks. Another hinted that the husband had been acting strangely, disappearing for long hours, avoiding community events, and once being spotted late at night at a diner across town with a man no one recognized. That small comment, almost whispered, suddenly shifted the direction of the case. Who was this mystery man? And why had the husband been meeting him in secret? Detectives dug into his phone records, banking details, and messages. Piece by piece, the image of a double life began to emerge. Hidden beneath the surface of a perfect marriage was a truth darker than anyone could have imagined. The husband was living a secret life, and that secret was about to explain why he was killed in such a brutal, personal way. The truth unraveled slowly, but when it did, it stunned everyone who knew the couple. Phone records revealed a long chain of late-night messages between the husband and a man named Daniel, his best friend since childhood. To the outside world, Daniel was practically family. He attended birthdays, family dinners, even vacations with the couple. He was the type of friend who could walk into their home without knocking. But hidden within those text exchanges was a side of their relationship no one had ever imagined. They weren't just friends. They were lovers. The messages grew increasingly intimate, filled with secret plans to meet in hotel rooms, coded language about hiding their relationship, and heated arguments about whether the husband would ever leave his wife for Daniel. Detectives read through the texts, realizing that what seemed like a normal marriage had in fact been a fragile mask covering a storm of lies. When the police confronted the wife with this information, her face changed. The tears stopped, replaced by a cold silence. Finally, she admitted she had discovered her husband's secret months before. She had found hotel receipts, strange phone calls, and at one point, even followed him to a meeting with Daniel. Betrayal burned inside her, but she had kept it hidden from everyone. On the outside, she played the role of the perfect wife, but on the inside, she was consumed by rage, humiliation, and heartbreak. As detectives listened, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about an affair, it was about pride, obsession, and control. Someone in this triangle had reached their breaking point. The question was who? Did the wife, driven by jealousy, finally snap? Or had the best friend, tired of being in the shadows, decided to eliminate his rival once and for all? What the investigators would soon discover would take this case from shocking to utterly unbelievable. As detectives reconstructed the final days leading up to the murder, the picture grew clearer and more disturbing. The husband had been living on a knife's edge, torn between two lives that were bound to collide. On one side was his wife, holding their marriage together with forced smiles and hidden anger. On the other was Daniel, the lifelong friend turned secret lover, demanding more than stolen moments and whispered promises. According to witnesses, the pressure was mounting. Just a week before the killing, a neighbor reported hearing shouting so loud it carried into the street. A woman's voice screaming, "I know what you've been doing," followed by the slam of a door. Another time, Daniel himself was seen leaving the house late at night, his face flushed with fury. Investigators soon learned that Daniel had grown tired of waiting. He wanted the husband to leave his wife, to start a new life openly. But the husband was paralyzed by fear. Fear of judgment, fear of losing his children, fear of shattering the perfect image he had spent years building. The triangle had become toxic, a slow-burning fuse ready to explode. On the night of the murder, phone records showed a heated exchange between Daniel and the husband, followed by several unanswered calls from the wife. Detectives believed all three players, husband, wife, and best friend, were entangled in a confrontation that turned deadly. The crime scene told its own story. Overturned furniture, a shattered phone, blood splattered across the walls. It wasn't a clean, calculated kill. It was raw, emotional, filled with rage. Whoever plunged the knife into his chest did it face to face, looking directly into the eyes of the man they claimed to love. It was not only a killing. It was an explosion of betrayal, humiliation, and obsession that had been building for months. But whose hand had gripped the knife? Was it the scorned wife, unable to endure the lies any longer? Or was it Daniel, driven by passion and desperation, determined to end the charade once and for all? Detectives knew the answer lay buried in forensics, alibis, and confessions that were about to shake the case wide open. The detectives knew that to solve this case, emotion alone wasn't enough. They needed hard evidence. The forensics team went back over the crime scene with painstaking detail. Every drop of blood, every fingerprint, every smear on the wall was analyzed. That's when the first real breakthrough came. The knife. It wasn't a random weapon grabbed in the heat of the moment. It belonged to the family's own kitchen set. This suggested the killer hadn't come armed. That's when the first real breakthrough came. The knife. It wasn't a random weapon grabbed in the heat of the moment. It belonged to the family's own kitchen set. This suggested the killer hadn't come armed. This immediately shifted the suspicion away from the wife and straight onto the best friend. It painted a picture of a violent struggle between the two men, possibly a final confrontation over their secret relationship. But just when detectives thought they had their man, a new piece of evidence complicated everything. Security camera footage from a house across the street showed Daniel leaving the neighborhood almost 2 hours before the estimated time of death. He had an alibi, shaky, but possible. The wife, on the other hand, had no solid alibi at all. She claimed she was upstairs, but no one could verify that. What investigators realized was chilling. Both suspects had motive, both had opportunity, and both had lies in their statements. Security camera footage from a house across the street showed Daniel leaving the neighborhood almost 2 hours before the estimated time of death. He had an alibi, shaky, but possible. The wife, on the other hand, had no solid alibi at all. She claimed she was upstairs, but no one could verify that. What investigators realized was chilling. Both suspects had motive, both had opportunity, and both had lies in their statements. He wrote, "Tomorrow I'm telling the truth. I can't live like this anymore." Those words hit detectives like a thunderclap. If he truly planned to reveal the affair, then both the wife and Daniel had reasons to silence him forever. The case that already seemed complicated had just turned into one of the most tangled webs of betrayal detectives had ever seen. Each clue pointed in 2 directions at once, and the question remained, which one of them snapped first? Detectives decided it was time to bring both suspects in. First came the wife. Sitting across from investigators in the stark, fluorescent-lit room, she appeared calm, too calm. She repeated her story again. She had been upstairs, she heard noises, she came down too late to help. But when detectives confronted her with the husband's deleted texts, her composure cracked. Her eyes filled with anger rather than grief. "Do you know what it's like," she snapped, "to live your whole life as a lie? To wake up next to someone who smiles at you but is really laughing behind your back?" For a moment, she seemed ready to confess. But instead she leaned back, folded her arms and said no more. Next came Daniel. Unlike the wife, he was visibly shaken. His hands trembled as he lit cigarette after cigarette in the interrogation room. He admitted to the affair almost immediately, his voice breaking as he described years of secrecy, stolen kisses, and whispered promises. "I loved him," Daniel said, tears streaming down his face. "I thought we were finally going to be together. He told me he would tell her. He told me it was finally happening." But when detectives pressed him about the DNA evidence under the victim's fingernails, his tone changed. He admitted there had been a fight that night, an argument that turned physical. The husband had pushed him out, and Daniel claimed he left, furious but alive. "I swear," he cried, "when I walked out that door, he was still standing." It was a statement that left detectives in a bind. Both suspects had motive. Both had lied. And both had placed themselves in direct conflict with the victim on the night of his death. The air in the station grew heavy with the weight of two possible truths. Had the wife, enraged by betrayal, waited until Daniel was gone before finishing what he started? Or had Daniel, driven by passion and rejection, lied about leaving, returning instead to deliver the fatal blow? The detectives could feel the answer was close, but the truth was slippery, hiding behind tears, anger, and half-confessions. Then, almost by accident, the final clue surfaced, one detail that would blow the case wide open. The final clue came not from fingerprints nor DNA, but from something far more ordinary, a neighbor's security camera microphone. While reviewing audio captured that night, technicians uncovered a chilling detail. Just minutes before the estimated time of death, a woman's voice could be heard screaming from inside the house. "You ruined everything!" Moments later, a crash, and then silence. For detectives, that was the missing puzzle piece. Armed with this evidence, they brought the wife back in for one last round of questioning. This time, there was no calm mask, no icy denial. As soon as they played the recording, her shoulders slumped, her face pale. She whispered almost to herself, "He was going to leave me. He was going to leave me for him." Then, through sobs and rage, the confession spilled out. She admitted she had followed the argument between her husband and Daniel, listening from the stairs. When Daniel stormed out, she confronted her husband in the living room. Words turned into screams, screams into shoves. He told her he was done hiding, that he was leaving her. In that moment, she snapped. Grabbing the kitchen knife, she plunged it into him again and again, her fury blinding her until the man she once loved lay lifeless at her feet. "It wasn't planned," she insisted. "It was passion, rage, humiliation all boiling over in one explosive act." But to detectives, it was murder, pure and simple. The courtroom would later echo with the details. The affair, the lies, the obsession, and the brutal end. The wife was sentenced to life in prison without parole, her face blank as the verdict was read. Daniel, devastated but legally free, carried the weight of the affair that set the tragedy in motion. And the husband, the man at the center of it all, was remembered not for who he truly was, but for the secrets that destroyed him. In the end, this was not just a story about murder. It was about the cost of deception, the dangers of love built on lies, and how passion, when mixed with betrayal, can turn into a weapon sharper than any knife. For the neighbors, the detectives, and the viewers of this haunting case, one truth remained. Sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones capable of the darkest crimes.